It is a beautiful thing, and we are very happy with this fusion of our church and state coming together to celebrate a life. And I think we are very happy and honored to have you in our midst in this very precinct. Thank you very much. Ngicela nibashayele izandla. My task here is to try to bring a spiritual component to the life, and I would want to call it the ministry of vocation of Dr. Peter Magubane, and try to see how he participated and trying to evaluate from the Word of God, from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. And hopefully my intention is to try to link that up with his work, to see how he participated and trying to bring across the face of Christ to humanity, and how he challenges us to find ways in which we can respond to the call which he initiated. So I will read from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. Matthew 25 verses 31 to 46. At that time Jesus said to his disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep at his right hand, but the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, O blessed Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me.' Then he will say to those at his left hand, 'Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me.' Then they also will answer, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you?' Then he will answer them, 'Truly I say to you, as you did not to one of the least of these, you did not to me.' And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life." The Gospel of the Lord. Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, the best way to reflect on the life from a theological viewpoint of Dr. Magubane is to just look around us. I have never seen an occasion that has as many cameras as this one. Outside, everywhere and everywhere. And it reflects his legacy and his life. But also maybe to reflect better on his life, it is important to look at the technology when he began his vocation or ministry as a journalist. Oftentimes, this is now a digital era and everything is digitalized. But I suppose when he began, his ministry, there was a camera. He would take a shot and then there will be a negative. Then the negative, there will be many of them, they will be put into a reel, into a spool. And then from a spool, then they will take them somewhere to be developed, and then the real image will come up. So in a certain sense, there was always within his ministry capturing of two images, the image and the image behind the image. The image that he would capture will be a negative, but which will reflect the real image of the person, him, or the event or the activity or whatever. And in a certain sense, I think it is important to then look into, when he was capturing the image, what was he trying to take out? What was he trying to bring out? What is it that the negative brought, which was developed, it really brought out the real image? I want to believe, first of all, that somehow his intention, the intention behind his work was to portray the hidden image of God in each person, in each event, and in each circumstance in which he found himself. God always hides himself behind certain events and activities and persons. So that is why we say we ourselves are created in the image and likeness of God. So in other words, we can say we are the negative of God. Those negatives that will then, when it's developed, then you'll see the full image as it comes out. How did he capture this? He tried to capture the hopes, the anguish, the joys, the optimism, the euphoria that characterized the children of God as spanning more than half a century. He tried to capture those images so that we ourselves can be able to see behind the image what he was really trying to portray to the world. That is why, inasmuch as you can look at his work as a secular thing in which he was participating in trying to portray or conscientize the world, the events that were happening in South Africa. But I would want to see in that, to reinterpret that, to see him portraying the image of God who was suffering, who was imprisoned, who was oppressed, who was in difficulties. And in a certain sense, his duty was to be able to show to the world today, to say, I am hungry, I am naked, I am oppressed, I am poor, I don't have freedom. And our duty, therefore, the duty of the world, was to be able to respond to that invitation of Christ to say, there is a problem. And to a certain degree, that was done through his work. Throughout the world, we were able to see those negatives developed so that people could see the reality of South Africa and also its difficulties during the apartheid era and even beyond. So in a certain sense, I think that merits him to find himself here in this church, to be remembered in this context. I would want to believe there were several times in which he came to this very precinct in order to capture those images of Jesus Christ, who was suffering, who was poor, who was naked, who needed freedom. So to capture that vividly, the image of Christ, and then to be able to spur people to respond to that plight, I think it was very, very important. I think as we remember him today, one thing that I want to leave before you is to try to look into the journey which he undertook with his vocation, capturing different images of the history of this country, the colonial, the pre-colonial, colonial, freedom in the 94 and beyond, if we can call it the post-colonial, to look into all those and see the images and see what is it that he was trying to communicate to us even today. He captured the images of dusty townships of Kliptown, Soweto, Alexandra, Diepsloot, and also he captured the transformation that took place from now to the present for people to be able to see those images. And he continues to capture those images as we see our country today. The question is, how best can we live his legacy, but also how best can we respond to the plight of those images which should vividly strike us from the time he began his ministry to the present. So we want to give thanks to God for his unique contribution in presenting the face of Christ, who was suffering. You know, if one went outside to look at the inscriptions, Hector Peterson and everything, it speaks about those images of Jesus Christ who was suffering, and somebody took time to try to portray so that we ourselves can respond to that. I just want to end to say he has finished his role. He captured especially a very painful part of our history. It is important now for us to also begin to capture the images of the present day, our present day, and see who is Christ and how is he suffering and how best can we address to that. So I want to thank you for listening to me, and I just want to end by praying for his departed soul and for his family, but more importantly for the nation of South Africa. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this afternoon to reflect and to give thanks for a life well lived, for a ministry executed, for images portrayed of you, Christ, in our midst. We thank you for Dr. Magubane, and we continue to pray that you may arise people of valor, dedication, and passion to continue with the work that he began. And we pray that you may console us as a nation and to console the family, and that we may continue to live out this legacy. And we pray for this memorial service that all the deliberations may advance your glory, but more importantly, reflect in a positive and true manner the life of Dr. Peter Magubane. This our prayer we make through Christ our Lord. Amen.
In thee, Thank you, Father. That was item number 3 out of 23 items. So that one of the things that I forgot to say was that besides this being a church and the decorum and the toilets, we must be out of here by 5. Muruti uchojwal. So it's almost 3. We have 2 hours to do this. Help me do it by sticking to time. I think we will do it with 3 minutes per person. We should be able to get there if we do that. I know that at the AU, Dr. Nkosazana introduced a mechanism, because their excellencies would come there with 20 pages of speeches and just roll on and on and on and on. So each one was given their allocated time, and when that time was over, the mic would switch off. We did not bring that technology here today. When I stand up, the mic is off. So let me just say, as a way of introduction, I grew up in the rural areas of what was called the Northern Transvaal. It's an area called Njelele. The village is called Chabarobedzi. Now, newspapers didn't come there. At my home, there weren't even any books. Even a Bible wasn't there at my home. A friend of mine, Zeblon Mtabuli, his sister worked at a printing house, and somehow she would bring back all these magazines, True Africa with Samson and Batman, Chunky Charlie. I'm talking to old people here. Yeah, Chunky Charlie, who would be stabbed and thrown into the sea, but in the next edition, you would find him standing up. And he had a jacket that could produce anything. She was a women's magazine, and she was very strong. She was kicking. She was like a karateka. Amongst those magazines was Drum. And that's where I first got conscientized about the work that people like Brapita was doing. And the bug of writing beat me at that time. And as they say, the rest is history. I'm standing here because the generation of Brapita, Bo Henry Ngumalo, Ralph Ndawo, and all those other people, Wobra Alf, did the kind of work that they did, which planted seeds in a little boy in the village out there to end up standing here today trying to manage this affair. So, Councillor Kabelo Gwamanda, Executive Mayor of the City of Joburg, you have your 3 minutes. If the speechwriter had done more than a good work, you're going to learn editing here today.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Unfortunately, I'm accustomed to that kind of technology. I was just a bit pleased that it was not present here. However, I will have to adhere to the rules as set out by the Program Director. I would first like to acknowledge you, Program Director, and I'd also like to acknowledge the members of the family, Peter Magubane. I would like to acknowledge the Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, and also acknowledge the Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Recreation. But before I continue, and perhaps this would be the highlight of the message in which I need to register to this afternoon. Because of the position that the country has taken in their advocacy, I am proudly South African. I take pride in the fact that we have not forgotten where we come from. We understand the struggles and the challenges that other countries are facing because we have been subjected to it for the longest of time. The privileges that we experience today, there are many international partners that played a critical role that assisted us to getting where we are today. And it is prudent. It is expected. It is our responsibility not to return a favor, but to stand tall and acknowledge the fact that we did not achieve our freedom in South Africa in isolation of other partners. And by virtue of that, the city of Johannesburg stands with the decision of the country. And regardless of what transpires, we are reminded of a moment of pride in who we are. So I'd like to thank you, Minister, for having advocated and ensured that the South African government takes a position in the pages of history. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to further acknowledge the veteran journalists that are present here and veteran photographers. Amongst them including Pearl Lutuli, Ruth Mutau, and Sipiwe Mhlamli, to mention a few. We are gathered here today with heavy hearts to pay tribute to a remarkable soul. The late Mr. Peter Magubane. As we reflect on his life, this extraordinary individual, we are compelled to celebrate the indelible mark he left on the world through his lenses, capturing not just moments frozen in time, but the very essence of the human spirit. We come together today in somber reflection and collective tribute to honor the extraordinary life of this late giant. As we navigate the corridors of memory, we are drawn to the profound impact this visionary photographer had left on this world. Transcending the confines of his material existence through the indomitable spirit captured within his frames. Peter Magubane, a luminary in the realm of photojournalism, transcended the role of a mere photographer. Born in 1932 in Ventersdorp, South Africa, he navigated the turbulent currents of his time, capturing the poignant moments that defined the struggle against apartheid. His lens became a powerful weapon to fight for justice, equality, human dignity, as he fearlessly documented the harsh realities faced by those oppressed. Magubane's work during the apartheid era and beyond serves as a powerful reminder of resilience and courage inherent in the fabric of our society. His lens bore witness to the trials and tribulation faced by our fellow citizens, challenging us to confront the injustices of the past and inspiring a collective commitment to build a more equitable city for residents of Johannesburg. Magubane's work went beyond the surface. It delved into the raw emotions of individuals facing adversity. His iconic images not only documented history, but also conveyed the resilience, courage, and strength of the people fighting for their freedom. Through his lens, he became a visual storyteller, weaving narratives of resistance and hope. In the face of adversity, Magubane displayed unparalleled courage. His commitment to truth-telling often put him at the crosshairs of the regime that sought to suppress the voices of dissent. He faced arrests, censorship, and intimidation, but he refused to be silent. His photographs became windows into a world that needed to be seen, a world that demanded change. I understand that I am to the end of my 3 minutes, but last, my closing remarks, Program Director, with utmost humility. The honor that has been bestowed upon me to address you in this gathering gives me the courage to earn my place in society, not by virtue of title, but through a meaningful contribution that I would take pride in as a South African citizen. I am fighting so that the youth of today can understand that the baton has been passed through to them, and with access to technology, I'm confident that if we can regroup and channel our efforts towards a more constructive and productive approach towards building a society that works, we as the city of Johannesburg first will thrive to be a world-class African city. Thank you very much, Program Director, and I appreciate the time that you've given me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've been advised that Me Zanele Mbeki is here. I didn't say First Lady because I know that if I said that you would kill me. Yeah. Me Zanele Mbeki is with us, also with us, Advocate Mjanku Gumbi, who is flying our colors at the UN. Welcome. After Peter passed away, Kylie Thomas, who is a senior researcher and senior lecturer at the University of Cork, and is head of the Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies. Quite interesting, the word genocide these days. In an article in the African Mirror, wrote the following about Brapita. Peter, a courageous South African photographer whose images testify to both the iniquity of apartheid and the determination and devotion of those who brought about its demise. Magubane leaves behind a vast archive of extraordinary images, many of which continue to be the signature of some of the worst atrocities committed by the apartheid regime. We're now going to call Nkuli to come and read a message from Bralen Kumalo, who is here, but because of age and other circumstances, he cannot read it himself. So Nkuli has been given the honor of doing this.
Afternoon, Dumelang Sanbonani. I'm here as Ntatelen Kumalo spokesperson. I was requested by Unkululeko Nontate Kumalo to speak on their behalf. Ngiguno Mathemba Kumalo. To the family and all protocol observed, I'm here to narrate what Ntatelen has written down. I no longer remember much. It was a long time ago. I first encountered Peter Magubane when we worked for the same boss years ago in Johannesburg. Sometimes we will be driving separate cars from an assignment to the same building. He also worked as a driver for Drum. Although we had the same boss, we worked for two different magazines. He worked for Drum and I worked for the Golden City Post. They were both owned by Jim Bailey and operated in the same building, separated only by a wall. We will occasionally bump into each other when we covered stories in Everton and Sebokeng. At times, we will even compete with each other, but I was usually at an advantage because the Post was weekly and his was monthly. Over the weekends, when he was off work, Peter used to sell vegetables. He'll load a lorry full of vegetables and park at various spots in Soweto, and people will know. People who knew will come through and buy. He had a strong head for business. That on its own, entrepreneurship started a long time ago when it came to Peter's life. He was really ahead of his time. I will say the fourth and fifth industrial revolution would have caught him on the way if it was back then. Peter was a very nice guy with a contagious life, but you will not want to be in the path of his anger. He was very passionate, especially about freedom. He was amongst others who marched to the Union buildings in 1954 for the Women's March. He was a freedom fighter. He defeated apartheid with his camera. As we used to say, a picture told 1,000 words. Peter was the first black photographer to win an award in South Africa. He was and remains an inspiration to many young photographers of his and this time. He has paved the way for and set an example of excellence for generations to come. My hope to them is that they learn from the likes of Peter Magubane, Alf Kumalo, Len Kumalo, Sam Nzima, and many veteran photographers and photojournalists who carried the camera as their weapon. If you think about it, a picture is what got us the liberation that we have today. we are where we are because pictures were leaked to the overseas shores. The last, I should say, I should speak for myself. The last I saw Peter Magubane was at his 90th birthday at his party, when he allowed Ubabule Kumalo to come through and see him. I should think that was a priceless moment for him and his family. Tutuzegani, Ndeni Magubane, but put prayer first. Be comforted. Thank you.
We're now going to have a slide presentation that chronicles Peter's work around June 16. Can you hear me? Yeah. I was saying that slideshow, it's a reality check that deserves of us to take a moment to consider not only the circumstances reflected, but the bravery behind the lens that captured that. It's important to just reflect on that. Former President Mandela let me just do this. Okay. President Mandela has run away. Yeah. Anyway, he had spoken about the bravery and the courage when he was presenting the award for meritorious courage. This was before Ikamanga and companions of O.R. Tambo, Baobab, and the rest. But he spoke about that. That citation speaks to the courage of Brapita. We're going to call David Meyer Golan, who is going to read a tribute by David Tenley. After that, when he finishes Broadsticks, it will be your floor.
Good afternoon to the Magubane family, all protocol observed. My dear friend Peter Magubane is a legend in the history of photography and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. I first witnessed Peter sharing his work at a convention in America when I was 25 years old. I cried, feeling his courage, his generous heart, his love of South Africa, and belief in dignity. This was a gentle, brave man, or in Peter's words, one tough cookie. I arrived in South Africa on the brink in 1985, waking each morning to cover the uprising and the repression by the white South African police and military in the townships around the country. Dangerous and important times in which I saw Peter each day also covering the daily riots. After 6 months, I accompanied a prominent activist to an underground meeting of the African National Congress leadership in Durban. In swept Winnie Mandela with Peter Magubane to also document this historic meeting. As the leadership greeted Winnie, said to Peter and David, why don't you go for a walk and come back in an hour? Walking down the street, Peter turned and said, David, I've been watching you and you are one tough cookie. I want to be your friend. I shared how much that meant to me and then asked, Peter, what do I have to know to work in South Africa during these times? Peter said, David, it's very simple. Listen, don't talk. And if you need to talk, don't say anything. I smiled. This began our friendship and daily working relationship, and a mutual tenacity to use photography to scream about the injustices of apartheid. Over the next 2 years, Peter and I lived next to each other in the neighboring hotel rooms in the Carlton Hotel in downtown Johannesburg. It was Peter who first introduced me to the Mandela family, for which I am forever grateful. We were both in the dining room of the Mandela Red Brick House in Orlando West, Soweto, the first night that Nelson Mandela came home from 20 years in prison. And both of us had the privilege to travel together with the Mandelas on Madiba's first trip to the 8 cities across America in 1990. Nelson Mandela and Peter Magubane so loved each other. For Peter, the camera was his weapon to inspire a world filled with love and possibilities. It is one of the honors of my life to have been Peter Magubane's friend. The day Peter was born, God created a treasure for South Africa and for humanity, a treasure that will live on forever. David Turnley, Paris, January the 2nd, 2024.
It's all. Okay. Yeah, I think this is more like it. The next speaker is Spokesmashiane, who is a veteran videographer and close friend of Dr. Magubane. As he comes, let me read to you a message from Kosini Nkosi. He worked with Brapita at the Rand Daily Mail. It says, Brapita Magubane. Here is a man who did whatever he could do for humanity. In 1977, we were detained at Moda B after he was released from a very long time in solitary confinement. That was like 500 and something days in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement means alone. When at Boma Day 300, you start talking to ants, asking them why in the choice of freedom they are choosing to be in prison with you. I don't know what happens at 500. I did up to 3. Kosini says, there was an incident around the prison yard as we were busy kicking around a ball. And Mr. Magubane was not taking part. I had the ball and I hit the ball and it happened to hit one of the security cluster members. In other words, the prison warder. They all rushed towards me. It was at this point that Peter jumped in and was in between me and the police. No one knew what to do. Peter said to the police, just touch him and you will never forget what is about to happen. The rest of the prisoners started making noise and the police were getting scared. We should not forget that Peter was always quiet and spoke little to very few people. That's why I think he was saying to the other guy, listen and don't talk. And if you talk, say nothing. Yeah, that's a classic. This is the man I worked with and taught me the skills in photojournalism. In every prison, we will have classes, and he always reminded me that I should never be scared to tell the police that my work is equally important as theirs. This is Nkosini. That spokes.
Now, as a symbol of respect, Mtula is called. Kulela Magubane, as a sign of respect. Again, Bagwetu, Nyazi Lakupwele, most of the veterans who were there during what I call the most difficult decade of our liberation struggle, from 1984 to 1994. I met Magubane 95, but I already knew him because my brother, Herbert Mabuza, who's late, was also a photographer. Now, angazi noma kuzobe kuyinhlonipho yini ukuthi masingasuku masonke and honor those journalists of that decade who risked their lives to record our struggle from 1984 to 94. We risked our lives. As I stand namanje, 109 of our colleagues have been killed at Gaza, recording their own liberation struggle. Abu Magubane Nati, we were there. We were there to record that liberation struggle. When I arrived, Abu Magubane did say, be brave, but also use your brain. There's no shot that's worth your life. Yes, there was a time at Katle home, for more than 3 months, now Abu Magubane being around, where we recorded during that so-called black on black violence. Almost about 3 months recording dead people in the Israel. Tomorrow is the 9th. 1994, our own president was nearly assassinated at the very Togoza. President Ramaphosa was visiting that place. Ahamba no McBride. We were covering that. Unknown to us, there were guys, snipers, who were stationed in one of the hostels there. As we were approaching on the outskirts there, they opened fire. Luckily, Armored Defense Units guys were there. They repelled. That's how Cyril McBride escaped. But unfortunately, we lost one of our colleagues, Abdul Sharif. We lost him. So, Bagwe Tungiti, salute to Abu Magubane. Salute to all the veterans who are here. I can see most of them here. We risked our lives for this liberation struggle. Were it not for this media, the world would not have known what was going on in South Africa. There are things that you guys don't know because Tina, we're working for a foreign media. So we were smuggling our cassettes out of the country. The atrocities, the savagery of the racist regime, particularly during that so-called black on black violence, which was not black on black violence, we know now. Understand? That violence was sponsored by the very regime, and they called it black on black violence. Izinto sasizishoot at that time. You guys won't believe. That's why we had so much international solidarity, because the world knew more about our country than you guys. That's why the world supported our struggle and hastened our struggle. So, Bagwe Tungiti, Halala Prapita, your bravery, your everything made me what I am. Now I'm brave. I was shot, I was detained, I was done all those things on behalf of my liberation struggle. Niti, Ambagatli Prapita.
Comrade Spokes, what he was saying is quite significant in that the internal dynamic of media and the external dynamic of media, the combination of those two produced the content that moved the world. I remember going to a hostel in Katlehong, Madala Hostel. And we had permission from not the superintendent of government, but from Babunkos. So we get there at the gate and we say, we've come to do a story about the conditions at the hostel. Niwiapi. So we say, well, Babunkos said this and that. So, okay. Iman Lab. This is a guy who, it's hot, but he's in an overcoat and he's bulging. You can see the stuff underneath the coat. So he disappears and we start looking at each other. It's me, Joe Mdlela, and Mbuzeni Zulu. We start looking at each other. Do we wait for this guy to come back? Oh, this is the time to use your brain, as Peter would say. We decided to wait. He came back and said, okay, Ngenan. And we went in. Terrible conditions in there. But these were guys who were in charge of places. So, as we call Ruth Mutau, this is now cross-generational. Cross-generational inputs. I'll read something written by Joe Mdlela. And when I talk about Joe Mdlela, I remember I had just arrived from Limpopo, so this isiZulu language was not really very good with me. So we were going to the other Madala hostel in Alex. And as we were going around, we were being shown around by these IFP guys. And they kept saying, Udlame, Udlame, Udlame. So I'm thinking, yes, our guy. I said to Joe, ask them to take us to Udlame, man. Because that's the guy really who seems to be at the center of this whole thing. Yeah, and Joe looked at me and laughed and said, no, Udlame is violence. I said, oh, why didn't you tell me? Ruth?
Good day, everyone. Greetings to the family. Where do I start? This is a legacy, a human being who lived. He's larger than life. And I started working for Mail and Guardian in 1993. I remember it was a Monday. I went to see Kevin Carter on Saturday, took my portfolio. And then on Sunday, he called me saying, do you want to come to work on Monday? I said, yes. Great, and then Monday I went to work. As I arrived, Kevin was sitting on a chair with a blue eye, big one. And I was like, what happened? Because on Saturday you were okay. And he said, Ruthie, you see, I went to Togoza, the comrades, and they kicked the camera right here. I haven't even started working. And he tells me things like this. I said, I think I need to redirect what I'm here to do. And he was so calm, you know. So I came from the generation of the Bang Bang Club. And where I worked, there was this group called the Bang Bang Club. And when you go to the streets, doing some assignments, then I will meet Peter Magubane, or Spokes, Walter Dladla, you know, a lot of them, Sam CB. But I've always wanted to be next to Peter Magubane because he had order. And because I was the shortest, he said, Rute, so I'll stand there, probably sometimes with a step ladder, or, you know, but always very protective. Peter Magubane was a man of few words, never spoke. Always at the back, with a smile. I don't know, but he always had those pictures. And those pictures that you saw of 1976, those pictures were taken with a film. It's not digital. Not now that you can click and then look at your images and then delete and say, no, this is not good, delete. We had to photograph using our film. And when we finish, and then we go, and then we will have our little talks, who did what and whatever. Walter was one who had always a drama, you know? And Peter will say, Walter, you know? But also Walter was like, if you stand next to Walter, you're in good books, you must be very careful. So in my journey, as I went through, Magubane will always say, you know, when you work, take your work into consideration, do projects, don't come and do work, go find stories that you'll do in the township. And when I looked at his books and some of his works, and I understood what he said about doing my own projects. And I started doing my own projects. But I think my few minutes here, I think few people wrote some tributes and then sent it to me. And I would like to say, you know, those tributes about Peter Magubane. In 2019, I organized a project called the Living Legend, of which Peter Magubane and Santi Mufwekeng were the first two recipients of that. It was a success, you know, and then people came, and I thought it's really good to honor people whilst they're still alive. Give them flowers, give them praise, and say all those beautiful things. And they must hear them whilst they are alive. And I'm glad I did that. In that regard, and when some of the folks, when they heard that Peter Magubane has passed, they sent me condolences so that I could read. One is from St. Fenta. Condolence for Uncle Peter from St. Fenta. I would like to pass my deepest and heartfelt condolence to the family, friends, and community of journalists in South Africa and around the world. A sad loss, our dear Peter Magubane. I was just a young reporter in the 1980s when I first met the legendary photographer whose brilliant and courageous work helped focus international attention on the brutality of apartheid. I had expected him to be one of those haughty celebrities who had hallowed fame to go to their head, but he was the exact opposite. From that first meeting, I was struck by his lack of arrogance. He treated everyone he encountered as a human being who was entitled to dignity. I noticed how gently he carried himself and how his eyes sparkled as his face pulled into that ready smile, often closely followed by a laugh. Uncle Peter never looked down on other people. Instead, his fallback position was to help to raise them up, particularly journalists. I think he saw us all as his children. That's very true. Most of us were a lot younger than he was. It seemed to me as he felt responsible for us juniors when we joined him in the field. The bravery that had seen him through the most horrendous experiences never flagged, and he often stood up for others at clear physical risk to himself. I know I was far from the only person he guided, but he would regularly make sure that I knew what to expect in different circumstances. For instance, as we were preparing to travel to Morea shortly before the 1994 elections to witness Madiba, Shenge, and Ditlek at the ZCC Easter pilgrimage, Uncle Peter took me aside and explained what a woman reporter would be expected to wear. We were already on the road away from home. I could search my trouser-heavy closet for a dress or skirt, or even to borrow one. A kikoi was brought into action and did the trick. However, even though he must have known I was a smoker then, for perhaps I hid it from this revered older, Uncle Peter neglected to mention that smoking was taboo for the ZCC. When officials checked our credentials at the gate, one asked if I had a cigarette. I promptly hauled out my box and offered him one. It was quickly confiscated. Long after 80s, our successive democratic election, and our ups and downs as a nation, long after I had journalism for our challenges, Uncle Peter was still there, always ready to advise and to lend a helping hand necessary. He still moved quietly, almost obtrusively as he carried out whatever task he was scheduled. There was still no arrogance, just an air of him being comfortable in his own skin, confident that he had done his best. That is how I will always remember him. That's from Semfente. And also there's condolences from Louis Gab and some friends from the US. I see my tata is here, so I have to move. Thank you very much.
No, I think, Ruth, some of those messages can be sent to the family and they'll be read on Wednesday. I was about to read Joe Mdlela's message when I was dragged off into Tlame. The message from Joe Mdlela says, the angels must be stomping the ground. Joe Mdlela is now Father Mdlela, is a priest. So you should understand the context of this message. The angels must be stomping the ground with throaty joyfulness in a gig to welcome back the returning son of the soil back to the land of his forebears. Hyperbole is the only way to make sense of Peter Magubane's death. After a long life of 91, aging close to 92, and dying a few days before his birthday on January 18, the day of his earthly arrival in 1932. Who would not be happy to have a person of his character return home, almost as if in victory after a long period of absence, fighting a cause of justice in a faraway world of apartheid South Africa? That's Joe Mdlela. We're now going to get a message from Ntate Dentleketle, but I think it is going to be read by Reggie. Where are you, Reggie? Lucy is the Executive Director of the South African National Editors Forum, SANEF, which organized today's memorial.
Ke a leboga, Prof. As Prof said, the message is from Tate Dan. It is not possible for one person to fully present who Pedro was. He was different but consistent in one, the time of his introduction into photography. During the time he was associated to Black Sash through New Age. For instance, one remembers him being arrested for selling New Age at the corner of Grace and Pritchard Streets in the early 50s. I was his best darkroom technician when he covered the first Independence Day of the Republic of Botswana. I was a darkroom technician then and won his respect for having produced the quality of negatives he insisted on. This was at the Post and Drum in Elof Street Extension when he was already working for publications such as Time magazine. He was different perhaps in his days at Drum at Marshalltown, Polly Street. Quite another Peter during the Soweto riots, another side of Peter during his incarnation at Modebie with the likes of Dr. Tlholo and others. Again, as a teacher and mentor of young talented photographers, unselfish and ready to develop talent. As a publisher of groundbreaking books on our culture and traditions, for example, Amandebele. His coverages of the hunger and lack in Africa, talking about Peter, there will always be more than one anecdotal presentation. There should always be the strong consideration. For instance, his daughter Fikile and the family has another experience of her father as a photojournalist who once dressed up as an old woman in one of his assignments during the Soweto riots and was arrested screaming at the apartheid police and so on. Fearless when facing opposition. That's Peter. Shalom. DTM Kakeke. Thanks, Prof.
Thanks, Reggie. We're going to have Glenda Daniels from SANEF to come and read the citation. Brapita received the Net Nakasa Award for Courageous Journalism, and she's going to read that citation that explains why he was getting the Net Nakasa Award. And then after that, there'll be a video that will be played of the event when Brapita received that. I remember it very well because I was the acting executive director of SANEF at the time, and I had to put all of that together. And he was already frail, so getting him to Melrose Arch was quite difficult, but he came. It was a cold night, and I remember promising Brapita that we won't keep him long. As soon as we're done, we'll take him home. And this is the citation, and you will then watch the video of the actual presentation.
Thanks, Brahmatata. Condolences to the family and to all of us. It is in this very church where we used to run and hide under those seats when the police violence got us when we were covering funerals. At one of those funerals, my foot got stuck nearly in a grave, and everyone scattered when the police shot rubber bullets and tear gas, part of Ruthie's Bang Bang Club generation that I come from. And of course, everyone had to run to protect themselves. And as everyone left, as I was on the ground near a grave, it was Ntate Magubane who spotted me and turned around with their car, picked me up and said, "You need to go home and have a bath," when I said I need to go back to the newsroom and file my story. SANEF citation for the Nat Nakasa Award for Courage and Integrity in Journalism. The world remembers Sam Nzima's iconic photograph of Hector Peterson carried to a car after he was shot. I think the sound's gone. After he was shot on June 16th, 1976, when the Soweto uprisings erupted. However, if you turn your attention to the events of that day, you will quickly find the work of other photographers who told the story of that historic day just as eloquently. People like Moffat Zungu, Alf Kumalo, Mike Mzeleni, Dan Klekele, and our winner this evening. And when you look at our winner's photographs of that day's events and the rest of that era of seething upheaval in South Africa, you will be struck by the expressions on the faces of his subjects. They are angry, yes, but you can also read something deeper, perhaps a celebratory defiance. He told the story of that historic year in the pages of the Rand Daily Mail. His photographs over the years have appeared in Drum Magazine, the Post, the Rand Daily Mail, Time Magazine, and the New York Times, publications and galleries all around the world. In his photos, he captured the subject's souls, whether it was a beauty queen on the cover of Drum Magazine, mourners standing in front of a long row of coffins at the burial of the victims of the Sharpeville massacre in 1960, a row of naked men humiliated by a doctor's examination at the pass office, the pain and despair of a child laborer, or the charmingly innocent white child sitting on a Europeans-only bench, with her black nanny kneeling behind her. Our winner has relentlessly pursued and captured the truth with his lens that he gave to the world. The winner was born in Fetus, a vibrant suburb in Braamfontein Station, where black, indigenous Africans, Indians, coloreds, and whites lived as neighbors. He grew up in Sophia Town, another suburb that was later demolished by the National Party government, which forcibly separated the races and their abodes. He started out taking photos with a small box camera and was ultimately employed by Drum in 1954. As happened to all the good storytellers of the time, our winner fell foul of the law, first with small incidents when he defied policemen who wanted to stop him from capturing the truth with his camera. He often tells amusing stories about burying his camera in a loaf of bread or in an empty carton of milk to get the clandestine picture. Later, he wrestled with the security police who locked him up in jail on charges of terrorism or defying the banning orders they imposed on him to stop him from communicating with the world. And they locked him up with other journalists and political activists during the Soweto uprisings in 1976. He triumphed and continued to tell the story of South Africa through his eloquent photographs. It is only fitting that our winner rounds off a string of accolades with the Nat Nakasa Award for Courage and Integrity in Journalism. Fitting because he worked with Nat Nakasa on a number of stories, including what has been dubbed the last interview by Nakasa with Chief Albert Luthuli. His photograph of Luthuli emerged last year, meaning 2014, during the celebrations of Nakasa's remains returning home. Luthuli was banned at the time the photograph was taken. Fitting also because he was one of only a handful of South Africans who saw Nat Nakasa in New York before his death. Our winner is Dr. Peter Magubane, photographer par excellence.
Member and Deputy Political Editor Matati Gallants, a Gauteng convener for SANEF.
This is so special. It's more special than anything else because there's nothing like recognition from your peers.
Veteran SABC journalist and founding member of the South African National Editors Forum, Judy Sanderson, received the SANEF Rostley Award. The award is presented to a member for extraordinary commitment to work towards the achievement of SANEF's goals.
I think
The Net Nakasa Awards. Better known as Nathaniel Ndazana Nakasa, the South African journalist was awarded a Nieman Fellowship in 1964 to study journalism at Harvard College in America. But the apartheid government denied him a passport. He was forced to leave the country on an exit permit. And 51 years on, journalists who've shown integrity in their profession continue to be honored in his name. Peter Magubane is the 2015 winner of the award. Magubane reminisced.
I was crying inside, but I said to myself, this should be the happiest moment in my life to get this kind of award. I said, this is the young man I would work with. This is the young man that will change apartheid with his pen. I will change apartheid with my camera.
The event was also attended by Beki Makubu, a Swaziland journalist imprisoned for reporting on the country's judiciary.
I think we nearly committed an injustice by drowning out Peter's voice. Thank you for replaying that. We're now going to call Pearl Lutuli, who, together with Gabu Chugwana, have penned a tribute that, even though it's by two people, will still stick to the 3 minutes rule.
I'm going to take some of the time that you have been taking from us. May I acknowledge, I heard that Sis Zanele was here, and Minister Naledi Pando, and all the other government officials. But most of all, today is about the veterans, whatever that means. May I acknowledge some of them who are here: Mot Mutanyane, Phil Mtimkulu, Willie Bukala, and many others that are here. I can't see everybody. Being in this church today gives me goosebumps. It brings back bittersweet memories. I can never forget the one time I must have been sitting somewhere there, and there was a speaker here, and a tear gas was thrown into the hall. And you can imagine the chaos that ensued. I remember running out. I managed to get out, and I remember seeing Peter Magubane standing on top of the car, clicking away, but he managed to signal to me that I should go into the car where he was standing. And so we are here today, and I'm in church again, and I would like to quote a scripture, Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought a good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. This is a triumphant conviction of a dying follower of Christ. And to me, this Bible verse aptly applies to Peter Magubane. The struggle is finally over for him. He finished his race and he fought his soul rest in peace. Peter Magubane was a legend. In his tribute for this amazing son of the soil, Matata Tsedu wrote, Magubane was a true revolutionary who fought for freedom, a freedom fighter who used his camera as his AK-47. This made me sit back and think about the contributions and sacrifices made by many South Africans for the liberation of our country. At the height of apartheid, the apartheid repression, some left the country to become real freedom fighters with real AK-47s, while most remained in the country and used whatever means at their disposal, including sticks and stones, to fight the apartheid regime. I dare say that the black journalists of the time also played a very pivotal role in the struggle against apartheid. They used their pens and cameras as their AK-47s to fight by writing and exposing the evil that was apartheid to the rest of the world. They sacrificed their lives, they dodged bullets, and made sure they wrote about the daily struggles of the people and covered every atrocity meted out against the people of this country. Many got detained and banished as a result, but they were relentless in their kind of fight. Peter Magubane was part of this lot. So, what makes him more deserving than others to be called a freedom fighter who uses his tool of trade, the camera, to fight against apartheid? Why do I call him a legend? When I met Peter for the first time, after knowing so much about him from reading the papers, this was in 1974 when I started working as a journalist. He worked for the Rand Daily Mail while I worked for the world newspapers. He was already a legend in my book by then, but he reached out to me to acknowledge me, and we talked about some of the articles I wrote, and he gave me pointers. We became friends and colleagues, never mind that we worked for different publications. Through the Union of Black Journalists and later the Writers Association of South Africa, we were brothers and sisters in arms. Peter was never the kind of journalist or photographer who waited in the newsroom to be sent out on a story. He had a drive and initiative to go out
and find the front page pictures. His work got notice internationally, and he ended up getting international assignments from publications such as Time magazine, New York Times, and many other the world over. Peter covered most of the political rallies and all the uprisings in the country in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. He made his presence felt by everyone, from ordinary people to the most highly ranked leaders in the ANC, PAC, AZAPO, and all other political formations in the country. And of course, the leadership of the apartheid government. They all knew him too well. In all probabilities, Peter might never have formally joined any of the political formations, but his presence in every one of them was always felt. He might not have said a word in these meetings and rallies that he attended, except observe and click away his camera. But he spoke louder than everyone else through the kind of pictures he took and published. He was always looking for a different angle from everyone else, including taking pictures through a rearview mirror, standing on dustbins, and on rooftops. Once he found his angle, nothing could stop him, including ducking bullets from the police and the thugs, of course, that there were many too there. Anybody else would have given up after being detained and kept in solitary confinement for over 500 days. Being beaten up by police, being missed by bullets, and most of all, losing your child through the violence started by the apartheid system. But it was like all that gave him more, it was like that all that gave him more reason to do what he did best. Peter was an artist. He had an eye for a picture that would make the front page. Through his pictures, he managed to capture the full story and in an artistic way. He was a historian. Through his pictures and the 17 books he authored, he managed to document the history of our country and some of our people. He had a curious mind and very good instincts. He could smell a good picture miles away, and once he got the whiff, he was relentless in capturing it the way he smelled it. He was an author. His books on the Bantwane people, Africa's undiscovered people, Amandebele, the vanishing cultures of South Africa, are not only works of art that give us a different perspective of the beauty of South Africa and its people and what we have been robbed of but has documented the history of the people of South Africa. He was a marketer through his books, Amandebele. He helped expose the beauty of the Amandebele and their unique artwork. As Maud Mutanyane put it, Peter had the ability to create a Magubane brand long before it was fashionable to do so. He had an eye for what would make him stand out and packaged himself accordingly. Take his Amandebele projects. Long before Esther Mahlangu became a phenomenon, Peter had identified the disappearing art as a phenomenon to be documented. In fact, I dare say that he helped launch the career of one of our most celebrated but humble artists, Esther Mahlangu, through his book. Peter was a legend. Peter played his part in South Africa and made sure he excelled in his chosen path as a photojournalist, an international correspondent, an artist, a publisher, a published author, a historian, and as we say, ulifezile uqatso lwakhe. May his enduring and relentless spirit rest in peace. Condolences, Figile and your family, and the whole Magubane clan in South Africa that has lost a son. Peter Magubane is now resting, but you are fortunate enough because he has left you with a beautiful legacy. I thank you.
I was being intimidated here by our spell. She's pulling the age rank. I wanted to just read a message from the editor, the present editor of Time magazine, which says, "We start this new year without a brave crusader who used his camera as a peaceful weapon to fight for the universal rights of all humans for almost 92 years, Peter Magubane. Much changed because Peter was here to witness the good and evil humans do to each other. During the 40 plus years I knew Peter, when he photographed for me at Time magazine, he recorded much violence as people fought for their rights and independence. But one story comes back to me when I think of Peter's passion. In 1988, he suggested an overlooked story about the young boys in Soweto, often homeless, who carried the burden of delivering heavy sex customers. Mostly miserably depressed and sometimes sniffing glue, they persevered hoping for better lives. Peter wanted the world to know, in the pages of Time magazine, his compassion for people was paramount. This story I will never ever forget. At the end of the year 2018, I met another colleague, also a witness with camera like Peter, Shahidul Alam, a fearless fighter for people's rights, imprisoned in his native Bangladesh that autumn. When I asked Peter what his message was for Shahidul, he said, "Keep fighting, brother. Peter's life mission until the end, but not the end, because his spirit and images are here with us forever, is to remind us all, keep fighting, brother and sisters." This is from Robert Stevens. We're going to call a photographer. Spiwe Mhlambi to come and have his 3 minutes.
Dumelang. My name is Sipiwe Mhlambi. I'm a visual storyteller. I'm a photographer. I'm a prodigy of greatness. I'm a prodigy of my mentor, my teacher, Peter Magubane. I didn't wish to read a speech. I wanted to speak from the heart, but there's so much that I can talk about Peter. And it means a lot to me because he's that symbol of success as far as I'm concerned. I met Brother Peter in, well, I used to call him Baba. But I met him in 1990 at Jabulani Amphitheater. I think I saw one of the pictures that were shown here during that time. I was nobody. At the time, I was just a kid with no family or relatives, looming around the streets, dusty streets of Soweto, looking for hope. I own nothing under my name, absolutely nothing. But I had a camera, and the camera that was given to me by a teacher that had adopted me at Tulani Combined School. I couldn't use that camera because at the time I couldn't read or write. I was 13 years old. She gave me a camera to say, you know, go do something with that. Maybe you'll find something with it. Around the ages of 16 to 19, I had mastered to use that camera. It changed my life completely. I was popular in my community with my camera, taking pictures of all the events that were happening around. But my favorite was going to Jabulani Technical, where there were always events. I met Abu Korimuraba there, with Steve Kekana there, with PJ Powers, Bumzwa Kembuli, all of those. And as I frequent to go to that place, and then one day there was a mass rally. A lot of comrades had been killed, so was that funeral. Somebody did say they're here because the old school guys, well, I'm not that old. I'm only 56. I met Peter when I was 21. So I gained a lot from him. I ran out of film. It was a similar camera to that, so I'm going to dedicate it to him. And I'm going to donate that camera to the family of Peter Magubane. As I was in there, I ran out of film, and I looked at a group of journalists with cameras like that, and they were very intimidating. But I was afraid to approach any of them. But I saw this man with gray hair. He looked like an angel. He looked like someone that I can talk to. And I approached him, and I said, Baba, ngicela ungiphi film. This is exactly what I said. And he looked at me and says, are you a journalist? I said, no, I'm not a journalist, but I want to be a journalist. And he said, come here. We sat aside. He gave me the longest lecture I've ever had. He gave me so much wisdom, things I've never had people talk about. I come from a community where, just around the corner from here, White City, Moroccan North, there was no hope. There was no future. We didn't have much role models. But when I saw this gentleman, and I explained to him who I was, what I want to do with my life, and he sat me down, and he said, you know what? This is what I'm going to tell you to do. Take this film that I'm giving to you. Go shoot whatever you want, and then bring it back to me. I'll develop it, and I'll critique you, and we'll take it from there. That was a masterclass of a lifetime. I could not believe that happened. My life changed completely. I became a so-called icon, a legend. I did all the work that I did. But now, above all of that, I would always like to say to people that even the generation after us, you know, simplicity, looking up to people, and just being respectful. It goes a long way when there's no hope, when somebody gives you that. Peter did not give me a film, but he gave me a life lesson. He gave me hope. My life changed. You can just imagine from 1990 up to today, I've worked in every newsroom you can imagine. I know most of you here. We've been colleagues. I have my work that is traveling all over the world. But just because of one approach, with the right time, right place, right manners, because he gave me that symbol. He just simplified what greatness is. His conduct, his outlook, he talked less. He would always send you to do things, but he wants to critique you on what you are doing, not what you are saying. So if you're going to sweet talk, Peter, I'm good at that, I'm good at that, he says, no, let me see your picture. Let me see your last picture you shot. Don't edit it. We couldn't edit at the time. But that film that he gave me, I have a contact sheet at home. It means a lot to me. I framed it, and that's all I have. And I'll pass it on to my children as they grow. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Piwe, for taking us into emotional spaces. Reminded me of the celebration of Sidney Poitier's Lifetime Achiever Award. And all these big guys were there. And Denzel stood to speak. And it could have been Spiwe, because he said he was a nobody. He found Sydney at a shop and said, I want to act like you. And Sydney gave him time. And Denzel was saying, I'm where I am today because Sydney, not knowing me, gave me time. And it's about giving people time. We're now going to call Deputy Minister Notawe Mafu. She's the Deputy Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture. When she finishes, we'll have a musical tribute by Prince Lingwasa, who is a jazz trumpeter. I will not come back here to call him.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Prof. Matata Tsedu. I really would like to greet the Father Matondo who had opened this service for us. I know he might not still be here with us. The family Yagwa Magubane, Sis Fikile, Ambassador Fikile Magubane, and any other diplomatic corps that I might not have seen. Minister Naledi Pando, who is amongst us, and of course, Sis Zanele, who is here, the Mayor of Johannesburg, Mayor Kwamanda, the creative artists who are here, particularly the legends. Some of them have been mentioned before me. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take this moment to actually greet you all And thank you for being here to celebrate the life of this photographer of note, an African patriot who told the world about the atrocities of apartheid state through his lenses, as everybody has been saying. In pictures, the pain that the apartheid state inflicted in our people will be told in eternity. Your love, Dr. Magubane, for your country is unparalleled. When the history books are relating to this form of art, let it be said that truly we once walked amongst the great, amongst the giants, and you are that giant. Of you, it must be said that your gifts, talents, combined with hard work, perseverance, and dedication, have taken this form of art to higher levels. Dr. Magubane of the 1976 June 16 student uprising earned him a worldwide acclaim and led to a number of international photographic and journalistic awards, as it has been already said. He became an international icon of the struggle of journalists and photographers working under the repressive regime. It is said that, and as I quote, a struggle without documentation is no struggle at all. Dr. Peter Magubane was the lens and the eyes that one can say saw it all. From being hired at Drum Magazine to cover the ANC's 1955 convention conference, to documenting the protest against pass laws, to Nelson Mandela capture outside Howick in KwaZulu-Natal. He covered the Rivonia trial, which was the watershed moment in the resistance against apartheid. The burning of the ANC, the Sharpeville riots, and the massacre that followed those riots. Steve Biko and the Black Consciousness Movement and the Soweto uprising. His work throughout his life confirms to me that what Ms. Susan Sontang had said about the work of photography in her essay titled On Photography, which he penned in 1977, and I quote her, "A photography is not just the result, an encounter between an event and a photographer. Picture taking is an event in itself, and one with ever more peremptory rights to interfere with, to invade, to ignore whatever is going on. Our very sense of the situation is now articulated by the camera's interventions. The omnipresence of the cameras persuasively suggests that time consists of interesting events, events worth photographing. This, in turn, makes it easy to feel that any event, once underway, and whatever its moral character, should be allowed to complete itself so that something else can be brought into the world, the photograph. After the event has ended, the picture will still exist, conferring to the event a kind of immortality, a sense of importance it would never otherwise have enjoyed. While real people out there killing themselves or other real people, the photographer stays behind his or her camera, creating a tiny element of another world, the image world that bids to outlast us all, close quote. These words echoed here defines Dr. Peter Magubane's lifetime effort and his contribution to to humanity. In the process of discharging his responsibility to humanity, he has personally paid a heavy price. Amongst the pains he endured was, of course, to be detained in solitary confinement, as it has been said, petrol bombing of his family house, and burning orders that followed, that aimed at curtailing his work, but he refused to bow down. And therefore, we are at this point now in our country, the point that we are going to be celebrating 30 years of democracy. And our democratic project would not have been complete without Dr. Magubane's work. And we dare not forget where it all started and how long and what it took to achieve it. Part of taking that journey back to realize where we are going means we must make stops here to those that played a critical role in our history, like what Dr. Magubane did. I just want to take this moment and thank the family of Magubane for having given us this son of the soil. I want to thank the family for having allowed us as the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture in March last year to honor Dr. Magubane. And when he couldn't come to the event, they allowed us in their hall, they opened their doors, and we spent a day with Dr. Magubane. Even though he couldn't speak, but his smile and his laughter told us that he was happy for us to be there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Peter worked a lot internationally. So there's been a lot of tribute that have come in from his friends outside the country. I'm going to read one now from a Time magazine photographer and a friend. It's Bill Campbell. He says, for many years I worked with Peter when we were photographers with Time magazine. I called him Mzee in Kiswahili. Peter was one of the most fearless, thoughtful, and caring humans I've ever had the privilege to know. His photography is a legacy that will enrich the history of South Africa's struggle against apartheid for generations to come. Ntate Bongani Hlubi, the neighbor of Ntate Magubane. Almost there. We are almost there. We're left with 2 items. After this, we might just make our 5 o'clock.
Good afternoon. Glad to meet you. It humbles me to see you here, more especially being visited by ministers like Mrs. Pando and the other Minister of Sports and Culture. It's very rare to see you in such occasions, you know. By God's grace, you are here. So Peter brought me up. I first in the 60s, but the death of the late Mr. Henry Ngomalo. But I didn't see him in that night. I met him later. His mother was still alive. And then during the early 60s, he brought us up. I went to college. And then in the late 60s, he entertained musicians and sports people. But now his is that entertained and left them with his house to be free, you know. It was sad to see that after his detention, they hardly came to come and see him. It was so heartbreaking to accommodate people. Peter, his house was burned by it was scorched, and then my late younger sister picked up an SAP bullet, meaning that he was about to be killed. But by God's grace, God stretched his arm and intervened. God stretched his arm and intervened. But now still. So we used to look after his house, you know, as neighbors. And we did not fear, even if when the security friends came, we were brave enough to say, no, this is our brother, he brought us up. You know. As time went on, Peter, the young veterans, for instance, I'll cut my story short. The very sons who were shot and killed in Silverton are our neighbors. That's when Peter had a beautiful car, Mercury, where they used to hide their literature in his car, and they used to hold meetings there. And Nama was a until time came in 1976, when, as you have seen in the pictures, and then late in 1978, in 79, I think. It was in 79. Peter, it happened with Ninja because he was usually away from home. So, you know, there were very many people who were spies in those days. And then others wanted to frequent Shepins. Others they did go there, but I didn't fear anything because because and I used to be there until later in the early 80s. Our young young men, that time when I met Mr. Alfkoma Ali. So when they would the time I said Silverton, they brought up were shot at for the release of other political prisoners. But all in all, I think him because but he was very strict and very disciplined. Even when he started writing his other 3 books, unfortunately, I hardly have a copy. But all in all, he brought me up. He looked after us, all of us in that neighborhood, and of course, other things as in is ninga cool. Some of his photos as equal. I saw most of his photos in town. I asked him why his photos to be dark. What it is because it's an eye that of a photo to be dark with that rich background and have a message. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.
Hello. There are people in the foyer. There are people in the foyer who are making noise. Hello. Okay. We're now going to hear messages from grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We're calling now Mpo and Becky, and when they finish, Ntokozo Shabalala will come and do, is it his piece? Ntokozo. There's no Ntokozo in Chivenda, you see, so I have to try and work it out.
Santan, can all the grandchildren please come stand with me? It won't do any justice if I do this myself. Dear friends, family, and those lucky enough to have crossed paths with the legendary Dr. Peter Magubane. Today is together to celebrate the life of a man who captured the world's moments through a lens. Let's not forget his remarkable ability to make us chuckle too. Dr. Magubane a man with a camera in hand and a treasure trove of wisdom under the enigmatic white hair. Yes, I said it, the white hair. Some say that was his signature. Some say it was claimed that it was because of his daily commitment to his artistry. I'm still not sure if it was a dye job or Mother Nature's grand display of his wisdom and enlightenment. Despite his worldwide escapades, this fantastic photographer kept all of us grounded, never dragging us to his photo exhibitions. Oh, the injustice of watching him on TV instead of jet setting. All right, I'll just repeat that. I think the mic went sweep. Despite his worldwide escapades, this fantastic photographer kept all of us grounded, never dragging us to his photo exhibitions. Oh, the injustice of having to watch him on TV instead of jet setting along him. But he had a trick up his sleeves for all his grandchildren. He taught us that diamonds are forged under pressure, not by being carried along the globe like a precious cargo. Let's face it, being spoon-fed success doesn't exactly build character. It breeds lady kilos looking for handouts. Dr. Magubane wasn't just a world-renowned photojournalist. He was a master of imparting life lessons. Whenever we were together, it was always a crash course in hard work and dedication. Hard work and dedication, those were his words. Encouragement to the loss of my dad, Charles, and his dedication to guiding me through life trials, priceless. To Opa, that's what we used to call him. The world knows him as Dr. Famous Peter Magubane. To all of us, he was Opa. That was it. To Opa, the man who knew the mixture of humor and wisdom makes life's journey a bit more bearable. Here's to you, Dr. Peter Magubane. For leaving. There we go, working again. All right, here's to you, Dr. Peter Magubane, for leaving behind not just snapshots of history, but the unforgettable head of enlightened hair, rest in eternal humor and enlightenment. Magubane, Nkwamose, Sithole, Hlunemhlophe, Lalakahle. All right, thank you guys.
Good afternoon to everyone present. So lovely seeing all of you today. Before this, I asked my grandmother, why am I not sad that Opa's died? And I couldn't put a finger on it until one of my good friends told me, it's because you're blessed to have a great grandfather. Today is not an event that I feel we should be sad about. Although we may have lost a legend, we're talking about someone who served this country for 91 years. Who not only served his country for 91 years, but served such a beautiful and loving family. It's so beautiful to stand here and see faces old and new, faces of friends and family. Opa has taken many pictures, but I can tell you now that if we were to take a picture of this room right here, this would be his favorite picture. We're talking about our great-grandfather, a man who has a million stories, a man who could tell a million stories through a lens. But Oupa was not just one in a million, he was one in a billion. And I say that with a capital B. Over the course of 2023, I had the privilege of attending 3 different occasions that got to celebrate my great-grandfather. I got to see him get his 8th honorary doctorate. I got to attend some of his amazing exhibitions. And I asked myself, how many times can one man be celebrated in the course of a year? I mean, this is a lot now. But that's what happens when you achieve greatness and you commit to hard work and dedication. I haven't even completed my undergrad and I'm watching this old man get his 8th honorary doctorate. What a man. And while I'm watching all of this happen in front of me, the only word I can think of is impact. The impact he has not only made on South Africa, but more importantly, his family. The most impactful thing he did for me was to leave behind my amazing grandmother, Peter Magubane, who is a testament and a symbol of his strength and the greatness that he embodied. The only memories I have of my Oupa that stand out to me were from when I was very young. But there was one significant thing that he said to me that has stuck with me through all these years. He said to me, stand up straight because you are a king and never be afraid to believe in something. Now let me tell you something about that old man. He definitely believed in something. We're talking about a guy who went to prison for taking pictures. And I'll tell you now, I'm too soft and too privileged to even attend prison. I'm not interested. Now, I don't want to say too much because I know my 3 minutes is going to be up soon, but I'd like to end off with this. I kept asking myself this burning question: how can I honor my great-grandfather? And the way we do that is we all stand up straight, because each and every one of us here are kings and queens. And let us never forget to believe in. Thank you very much to each and every one of you.
Because you were not the only one who was told about this king story. Carol Laser says, my friend Peter was naughty with a great sense of humor. We worked together as photographer and journalist for so many years. Neither of us believed in rules, and it was always fun breaking them. For instance, when Peter was imprisoned at Modabi, I used to visit him with my toddler daughter Nikki, with little bunches in her hair. I reckoned they wouldn't arrest me with her in tow. We'd bring a cake and carton of milk, which we had washed out thoroughly and filled with whiskey. This is in jail now. Both were shoved through the prison bars. The cake wasn't important, but the whiskey Peter enjoyed. Heroic and fearless, Peter taught me how to make the best of sometimes frightening situations. He was philosophical, kind, and always treated everyone he met with respect. I was once with an Afrikaans reporter in the car in Joburg. We stopped at a traffic light. Peter was walking past. He leaned in the open window, listen carefully, and gave me a smacking kiss on the lips. Now, Carol is white. My colleague from Beeld almost had a heart attack on the spot. On one occasion, interviewing Winnie Mandela for our book on women in the struggle, we arrived early. Winnie was, some would say, always late. Madiba opened the door and gave us tea. Through Peter, I met some of the most remarkable people. Peter received so many accolades, local and international, but was modest. He never boasted, but throughout his life, let his length do the talking. even when he hid it in a loaf of bread. He still had buckshot in his body, which must have been painful, but he never complained. Peter announced to me early in our relationship that he was my Zulu king, and I had to listen to him. Of course I didn't. I told him I already had my Jewish king, my husband, who I certainly didn't listen to. We laughed a lot. Of course, we were anguished at times. For years, his negatives and contact sheets were hidden in our attic. Today, like everyone who loved Peter, I'm heart-sore, but also grateful that we spent such interesting times in our South African history together. When I saw him a few years ago, we sat and giggled for 2 hours. Peter, okay, I should read this correctly. Peter, I reckon I'm going to join you one of these days. Not sure if it will be upstairs or downstairs, but we'll have a good laugh together. Much love, Carol. So this introduces Mtate Tabash to come and do the honors. Announcements and vote of thanks. After the announcement and vote of thanks, the photographers are asked to come and do the click here. And then the last thing that I should be saying is that these screens will be running live for 15 minutes after we finish. If anyone wants to take pictures near them and all of that, that will be the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ntate Matata. I have been asked by the Magubane family to express their gratitude for what has happened here today. Thank you very much. Let me start with Isanev. When the news broke about the passing on Gababa, organized a memorial service. So SANEF has been very key to getting today to be what it is. We thank them very much for pulling the journalistic community together and making sure that they're all here to honor Peter Magubane. Secondly, I would like to thank the management of the parish, Regina Mundi, in particular Father Madondo, who opened for us earlier on today. They responded at very short notice when we approached them about having the hall of the sanctuary. And it was indeed quite fitting. Going on with our gratitudes, I would like to acknowledge J.D. Park, who have been incredible organizing across a spectrum of all our needs. I really thank you for going the extra mile, and I know that you'll walk with us till the end of this process. I would also like to acknowledge various government departments which have assisted us, especially with navigating protocol and all these other things that we're not too familiar with. But I would like to thank you very much for being next to us in this process. The JMPD and crime wardens who've helped with escort services and providing security. And then the caterers who will provide refreshments following the service. I must thank you, Program Director, for steering the ship this afternoon. When you said you had 23 items, I thought we'd finish at 6. So well done for getting us done by 5:20. But most of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time and being with us this afternoon. I think it means a lot to the family to see the support, and we really thank you. Sitinenze njalo nakwabanye. Now on to some announcements. Firstly, the funeral service will be held at Bryanston Methodist Church. It's located at 117 Grosvenor Road in Bryanston. This will be on Wednesday, the 10th of January, starting at 9 in the morning, sharp. Thereafter, the burial will take place at Fourways Memorial Park. Buses have been arranged to take any people who would like to be part of this. They will leave the community hall at Zone 1 Diepkloof at 7:30 in the morning on Wednesday. So anybody who would like to get transport, please be there before 7:30. The buses will leave at 7:30. As I mentioned a bit earlier, we have refreshments at the back of the hall, and we invite all of you to join us in having refreshments, greeting the family, and otherwise relinking. Finally, we found the sanctuary very clean when we came in. I would ask that we take the bottles that we've been drinking water from. Everybody, please take your bottle, or take a bottle that looks lonely and nobody's attending to. As you get to the back, there'll be a place where to drop those off. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Before you go, I know they said there's food, but let's just have some order, please. The last item is closure. If Unalim Rutimo, who can do the prayer. Oh, sorry. There's the click. Photographers, please come and do the thing.
Anyone with a camera? Well, I see a lot of guys have left. Okay. Those who have cameras right now, please remove your stick, remove your memory card, put it on shutter speed high, put it on manual focus. Are we ready? Okay, I think we can use this microphone. Is everyone ready? Can we go? Continuous shooting, high speed, manual focus, remove your stick. Can you all come this way because the microphone is with me? Okay, I'm going to count. So the idea is we're saying farewell to our leader, to the legend, our teacher, our colleague. With the shutter, we say farewell. Go. Thank you very much.